Hello? The story I'm about to tell you today is a solved case. A hair salon owner met with misfortune because of her job one night. Although the perpetrator was seen by witnesses during their escape, the lack of necessary evidence turned the case into a cold case. But 10 years later, something unexpected happened. The location of the incident is Spartanburg County, South Carolina, USA, with a population of about 40,000. The main character of our story is Dana Satterfield, a 27-year-old hair salon owner. She was not only beautiful, but also skilled at managing relationships. As a result, she had many regular customers who frequented her hair salon. She was married and had 2 children. Later, she and her husband experienced some conflicts, and their marital relationship encountered difficulties. For this reason, they decided to separate. After they separated, sometime later, something terrible happened to her. So, what happened to her that day? Next, let's turn back the clock to July 31, 1995. July 31, 1995 was a Monday. Dana, 27, was working in her hair salon as usual. As both the owner and the only stylist, she often worked late. 6:30 p.m. She went to buy a bottle of cleaning fluid from a shopkeeper named Shirley. She then returned to the hair salon and resumed working. 8:11 p.m. Shirley, the shopkeeper, had gone out earlier on an errand. On her way back to her shop, she passed by Dana's hair salon. At that time, Dana was cleaning up in the salon. They greeted each other, and Shirley continued back to her own shop. 8:30 p.m. At that time, Shirley was getting ready to go home. She stood waiting for a ride under a streetlight in front of Dana's hair salon. Just then, she noticed the lights in the nearby hair salon suddenly go out, and she heard strange sounds coming from inside. Then, she saw a man jump out of the salon window. After getting up, he saw her standing nearby, watching him. Seeing this, the man quickly pulled his gray t-shirt over his head and ran towards the side of the building. Shirley was terrified by what she had just witnessed. So, she immediately ran in a different direction, intending to call the police from a nearby shop. Let's retrace the scene. After the man jumped out of the hair salon window, he ran in one direction. Shirley, in her panic, ran in a different direction. Then, coincidentally, they ran into each other in front of a nearby shop. They looked at each other, stunned, for a few seconds. Shirley saw the man's face. This frightened him, and he turned and ran, quickly disappearing from Shirley's view. Shirley was frantic and didn't know what to do. She tried to flag down cars on the road, asking for help. But it was almost 9 p.m., and very few cars were passing by. They probably thought Shirley was hitchhiking and ignored her. After her unsuccessful attempts to stop a car, Shirley ran to the nearest shop and called the police. After receiving the report, the police quickly arrived at Dana's hair salon. Upon entering, they found her slumped on the bathroom floor, her back against the cylindrical water heater. A cord was tied around her neck, with the other end tied to the heater. There were no signs of life. There were many bruises and bloodstains on her body. It appeared that a violent struggle had taken place, ending in Dana's tragic death. Except for the bathroom, there was no damage to other areas of the hair salon. Her bag was still on the table with her keys beside it. The cash register was untouched. No other property was missing, so the police ruled out robbery as a motive. Then forensic experts arrived at the scene. They used a special ultraviolet lamp. The light from this type of lamp can reveal the presence of semen. And indeed, there was a reaction at the scene. However, concrete results still needed to wait for further laboratory testing. From there, the perpetrator's DNA could be identified. Her husband's name was Michael Satterfield. After hearing from neighbors, he immediately rushed to the crime scene. The police then detained him for questioning. He said he and Dana had 2 children, but later their marriage ran into trouble and they separated. They had been living apart for a while but weren't yet divorced. He was deeply distressed upon learning of his wife's murder. The police then took his fingerprints and found a match with a fingerprint on the water heater. Dana was a hard worker, business-minded, and provided excellent customer service. She was murdered in her own shop. She had recently had disagreements with her husband. So, her husband, Michael, quickly became the prime suspect for the police. The police then called Shirley, the witness from that night, and wanted to ask her if she had clearly seen the killer. Shirley said she had seen the man's face clearly that night. He was white with brown or blonde permed hair. He was about 1.73 meters tall and weighed about 65 kilograms. Sketch artists drew a portrait of the perpetrator based on Shirley's description. The portrait didn't resemble Mike at all. Let's take another look at the image of the window the perpetrator jumped out of. The window looks very small. And here's a picture of Mike. He's very large and overweight. With his size, it would be almost impossible to jump out of that window. If he tried, he would definitely get stuck. So why was his fingerprint on the water heater? Mike explained he was a plumber, and he had installed the water heater in the salon himself. Another colleague was present during the installation. The police also investigated and suspected that Mike might have paid someone to commit the crime and was the mastermind behind it. But they couldn't find any clues or evidence to support this theory. Finally, Mike was eliminated as a suspect. New evidence. Around 8:40 p.m. on the night of the incident, a witness drove past the hair salon. The driver saw a suspicious man standing next to a blue Ford SUV with custom rims. The witness said the man made threatening gestures towards him. Let's review the timeline of the events. 8:11 p.m. Dana greets Shirley, a shopkeeper. 8:30 p.m. Shirley encounters a man jumping out of the hair salon window. 8:40 p.m. A suspicious man is seen standing next to a Ford SUV. Therefore, the man standing next to the SUV could be the perpetrator. If we can find that vehicle, we might be able to find the killer. The police then issued a bulletin with a sketch of the perpetrator and the vehicle, hoping to find useful leads. After the bulletin was released, a man who worked near the hair salon reported that on his way to work that evening, he had seen a large blue and white Ford SUV parked between two large trucks. He was a car enthusiast and remembered the vehicle's features vividly. The police immediately searched for information on all vehicles with similar characteristics seen in the vicinity during that time frame. Among them, there were 3 to 4 recordings of a vehicle matching the description and with the same license plate. And that vehicle belonged to Mary Ann Vick. The police then went to see Mary. She initially cooperated with the investigation. She said her son had driven the car out on the night of the murder, but she insisted her son had nothing to do with the case. Because her car closely resembled the vehicle described by the police, she was constantly being followed, monitored, and reported. This made her very uncomfortable. So, she placed a sign on the back of her car stating that the vehicle had been checked and asking people to stop reporting it. Furthermore, she reported the police harassment to local authorities and refused to cooperate further with the investigation. Unable to continue cooperating with Mary, the police brought the witness from that night to look at her car from a distance. The witness said, although the vehicle looked very similar, he couldn't be certain it was the same one. Due to the witness's uncertainty, this lead was also cut off. At this point, the crime lab's report on the scene investigation came back. Based on the situation at the scene, it was highly likely that Dana had been raped. However, the lab had not been able to detect the perpetrator's DNA on her body. A forensic pathologist recalled that she had been at the scene, used a UV light to check, and clearly saw a reaction indicative of semen. Why wasn't there any trace now? Finding this strange, she re-examined all the items from the crime scene. Finally, the forensic pathologist successfully extracted semen DNA from a comb. However, since the police didn't have another suspect, they couldn't compare the DNA. The case then hit another dead end. Due to the lack of new evidence and leads, the case remained unsolved for a long time and became a cold case. In 2005, 10 years after the incident, the police still hadn't completely given up on the investigation. Occasionally, new leads would emerge in the case. At that time, a new sheriff took office in Spartanburg County. After taking office, he ordered the reopening of the cold case investigation from 10 years prior. He believed that the case had gone cold due to the lack of technology at the time, preventing them from uncovering the truth. He assigned a detective named Thomas Smith to reinvestigate Dana's case. After receiving the assignment, Detective Smith went to see a retired FBI profiler. This was a highly experienced profiler. Profiling is a specialized, professionally trained occupation. They sketch a psychological profile of criminals by analyzing their modus operandi, the crime scene layout, and criminal characteristics. From this, they can predict the characteristics, personality, and even subsequent actions of the criminal. After learning about the details of the case, the retired profiler described some characteristics of the perpetrator to Detective Smith. 1. Young, white male. 2. Someone in Dana's circle. 3. Familiar with Dana's work and schedule. 4. Had been to her hair salon for a haircut. 5. Had a liking for Dana. 6. Low level of education. 7. Left the area after the incident. While Detective Smith began reinvestigating the case to see if anyone matched the profile, Dana's mother unexpectedly called the police to provide a new witness. The key witness. The new key witness was Michael Pace, a 27-year-old employee at an auto repair shop. By this time, 10 years had passed since the incident. Dana's daughter was now 18 years old. One day, by chance, Dana's daughter drove to Michael's auto repair shop to get her car fixed. Two mechanics were chatting, and one of them told the other that this was Dana's daughter, all grown up now. The other mechanic was Michael. Seeing her brought back memories and made him feel guilty. Later, Michael went to see Dana's mother and told her. He thought he might know something about the clues in the case from 10 years ago. Soon after, the police went to see Michael. He said that although he knew some clues and was willing to tell them, the police had to agree to keep his identity confidential. He had been threatened in the past, which made him afraid. He didn't want to get involved.
The police agreed to Michael's request. Michael recounted, he thought his friend, Jonathan Christian Vick, might be the perpetrator. This was Mary's son, whose car resembled the suspect's vehicle. When Mary refused to cooperate with the police investigation, Jonathan was 17 years old, still a minor, so Mary didn't allow the police to question him. Later, since witnesses ruled out the car, the police didn't return to her house. Michael continued, he and Jonathan were very close and often drove around together. That year, he worked at a bowling alley. On the day of the incident, on his way home from work, Jonathan happened to catch up with him, and they sat down to chat for a while. During their conversation, Jonathan mentioned Dana. He said that Dana had 2 children, that she and her husband were having problems and had separated, and that although she was a bit older, he liked her very much. It seemed like Jonathan knew a lot about Dana. Dana was much older than him, so Michael thought he was joking and started laughing at Jonathan. Who knew that Jonathan would suddenly become very angry about it? Michael also added, that night, after dropping him off at home, Jonathan said he needed a haircut. It was already very late, and all the barbershops were closed. He told Jonathan to wait until tomorrow, but Jonathan insisted on going to Dana's salon for a haircut. A few days after the incident, Michael was playing billiards at a local pool hall when he ran into Jonathan. Jonathan told him, I'm about to join the army and won't be back for a long time. You are forbidden to tell anyone about the things I told you the other day. Otherwise, I will kill you. Michael was stunned, not understanding what Jonathan meant. Jonathan added, if you don't know now, you'll know later. That was the last time the two spoke, and they hadn't seen each other since. Based on Michael's description, the police believed that Jonathan closely matched the profile created by the retired FBI profiler. 1. Young white male. 3. Familiar with Dana's work and schedule. 5. Had a liking for Dana. 4. Had been to her hair salon for a haircut. 7. Left the area after the incident.
The police then retrieved the sketch based on witness Shirley's description and compared it to a photo of Jonathan. There was a striking resemblance between the two. The police determined that Jonathan was the perpetrator in the case and started investigating him. But he had disappeared. During that time, the police contacted one of Jonathan's ex-girlfriends. She said Jonathan had abused her, even pushing her into a bathtub and severely beating her. During a drive, he took her past Dana's hair salon and told her, "There was a case here, and the police wanted to charge me, but they had no proof. If you dare leave me, I'll make you disappear just like that." Upon further investigation, the police discovered that Jonathan had a fiancée named Heather Renee Sellers. Heather disappeared on the afternoon of September 24, 2002. That day, Jonathan went to Heather's aunt's house to pick her up. Afterward, they went to a bar together, and Heather had been missing ever since. Jonathan was the only suspect at the time, but he wasn't charged due to lack of evidence. 2 months later, Detective Smith finally contacted Jonathan. He told him that he was reviewing old case files, including Dana's case, and wanted to meet with him on Saturday to ask some questions. Jonathan agreed to the request, but ultimately didn't show up. With all the evidence gathered, Detective Smith believed Jonathan was the real perpetrator. Therefore, he requested a warrant from his superiors to obtain Jonathan's DNA, and the request was granted. 2 weeks later, the police forcibly took a DNA sample from Jonathan. After comparing it to the DNA found on the comb 10 years earlier, it was a match, indicating that Jonathan was the man the police were looking for. In October 2005, the police arrested Jonathan and charged him with Dana's murder. At that time, he claimed, "I don't know any Dana. I have nothing to do with this." In November 2006, the case was reopened for trial. In court, Jonathan initially denied the charges against him. However, faced with the overwhelming evidence presented, he finally confessed and was sentenced to life in prison.
Dana's murderer is still free, and I'm going to prison. She did not get justice today.
As for his missing fiancée, Heather, in 2006, police found traces of blood and blonde hair in an abandoned car. It was believed that the blood and hair belonged to Heather. However, this has not been confirmed. Although Jonathan remained a suspect in Heather's disappearance, he was never charged. In 2010, while in prison, Jonathan brutally assaulted another inmate. He was convicted and denied parole until 2035. Finally, the case was brought to light after 10 years. However, no one knows whether Jonathan's fiancée, Heather, is still alive or not. Whether her disappearance is related to Jonathan, we cannot know. Perhaps everything was done by him. And see you in the next case. Goodbye.